Hello everyone, welcome to another video, and this video was prompted based on a video that was shared on one of my posts on Facebook, and it was thinking that it was speaking to what the things I speak to based on English law. And so what I thought to do was just create some notes. And I think this is a great way that if we bring in a video that is shared and that maybe has many views or many people have seen it or follow that person, and I can then show you what that video is really speaking to against the law, then I think that'll help us progress further in our comprehension of all those videos that profess they're speaking to the law, but actually they're speaking to a proponent of law. Okay, they're not speaking to the law; they're speaking of something they may be able to speak to in regards to what's happening in the system, or they're creating a piecemealing ideas together and then thinking they're speaking to the law. So let's get right into it, shall we? I wrote down some key facts of what was brought to my attention, and I'm going to read those. I thought, what, instead of me just going, just on my own thoughts, if I put it down in sort of a succinct order, it'd be better to follow of how this video, what that video is speaking to, based on what I'm speaking to, so that we can, like I've already said, established when we're speaking to law and when we're speaking to ideas presented within proponents of the law. Now, on my recent post, someone attached the video which I've already spoke to, and it was recently uploaded within the last month or so by an individual who calls himself Paraclete Edward Jay Robin. Okay? And the video was entitled, "How Did Our Bodies Get Used for Money by Bankers?" Now, the person who added this video, from my view, added to it the comments, added to the comment section of one of my Facebook posts, again, which I already alluded to, thought this person was speaking to what I endorse, which is knowledge of the law. Now, at first glance, the title itself is not speaking to the law at all, but constructs attached to ideas within the system of jewelry. To the extent the title itself sets off alarm bells, and hopefully by doing the English law series, this should start beginning to set off alarm bells to you, that is not speaking to law at all, and so has nothing to do with my research. His basis is founded upon his interpretation of the Bible with what is being observed within the world, and then inserting these ideas into coming to know the system of commerce and its banking scheme. He begins with the first descent of man being that of the concept of purchase. Now, I thought perfect, but then dissolves the real meaning of this word by stating it is when flesh became the basis of value. From this point on, he then goes into some interesting facts on the origins of Hebrews, although I thought it was a language, not really a race, and I thought it was a language that the Jews used, but it doesn't matter, it's here or there. And from this point onwards, he describes the origins of the Jews, Hebrews, whatever, which is a group of people who believe in the religion of Judaism. So, what does this have to do with English common law and equity? Nothing really. Inasmuch as one has to agree to be under Jewry, namely the agreement to give up one's individual right to hold land subject to the inherent right of dominion. Now, next is the English common law under inherent dominion. Now, this was subject to the feudal land tenure system that the Roman Church, under a Judeo-God and next separated by Christ's figure born of this God, not through the laws of nature, but through thought only, to which had no right to common law, nor did the Jews have right to, because the Jews held no land. So thereby, either institution could hold, according to the feudal land tenure system, as a common law interest. Meaning, when we're talking about law, we're talking about the hierarchical system of land holding. Well, if the Roman Church nor the Jews could hold land in common law, then we're speaking about something else, or an interest that has evolved from or descended from the English common law. Okay. Now, the common law legal title of the time was subject to a life, and we're speaking to the initial feudal land tenure system. Religion and beliefs are fictions, notice, in laws of perpetuity, so obviously not a life. Now let's just stop right there. I'm going to browbeat this. Yeah, browbeat this, fine. But let's just continue on to make sure that we can quickly go to something. What's our capstone? Or not our capstone, but what is our cornerstone? To then build our foundations from there on, to then establish what that party is speaking to. If we know the principle, then we know what the fiction is. Okay? So the church and the religion of Judaism have no rights in common law in which land is held. So are we speaking about law at all from this moment moving forward in this video? Obviously, we are not. Edward Jay is not talking a law, is he? I'm not sure he actually ever claimed he was. But he's speaking to a right to the use of land in perpetuity, or of a right, as is the practice of banking and jewelry, to lend against the fruits coming from the land. Thereby, the video is speaking to the instruments created under jewelry and the church. He's not ever speaking about the land and one's inherent dominion right. Now, we can just look to King Edward I. And you can go to Blackstone's commentaries and just go to the history of Edward I and his interactions with the Jews. Now, it will firmly tell you that Jews had no right to land. Jews were considered the king's pets, or if you were in France, under that king, the king's slaves. Jews would loan money, as that is all they have, and that is the equitable wealth created from the land against the fruits lords who were, of the time, in charge of. They were in charge of an interest in land that then created values through the fruits, and then to which the Jews can create a loan against, because they didn't have the land in order to establish the credit to create the loan. They then made purchase and sold through merchant laws and all that, and to then create values, to establish gold, and then to gold that loan, or to loan those values back to the people who needed a loan against incidents and so forth that the king held, or against things they wanted purchased subject to those equitable rights in land. Okay? So when they controlled these fruits and they became too disruptive, thereby disturbing the peace according to the common law, they were removed of all protection of the king. So in essence, the Jews had to leave the kingdom. I mean, I wonder if that really what happened in Egypt as well. I mean, as is commonly told today, that the Jews were kicked out of over 100 territories. I like to use the word territories because that is a jurisdictional term as opposed to countries. So they were kicked out of over 100 jurisdictions, and then or territories. Sorry. And they were said to be gone from the English common law, so that kingdom, for over 200 to 400 years. Now, obviously, they returned in full force, probably, the 17th century, let's say, as they grabbed a lot of the equitable interest held at that time in the kingdom via the family of the Rothschilds. And, as the Jews so professed, that's how they got in control, grabbed a stronghold of the kingdom, because at that time, guess what? Common law feudal land tenure system was dissolving into free and common socage. Common law recognized the use, to which then that use you could then create a trust to then come as a beneficiary and then create another use under. And that's what the Jews grabbed a hold of, because that was a equitable benefit from the land as a tenant, not as the land itself held in common law. There, bingo. Now you start to realize the different interests that each party holds. And it's succinct. No one's breaking any law. Everyone's holding a separate interest. It is your personal agreements that are affecting a jurisdiction based on a subject matter that you then are using to overreach through that agreement your rights to the legal title held in common law, and more predominantly that right in dominion. Now, this, as I go on, this is a system now of banking against the fruits of the land, but never holding the credit of the land itself, held in common law through legal title, because that is held by the life, not the fiction. Now you can't take that description too far, because the life interest with used English law is through a legal personage, so it's a fiction. So don't take that definition too far. You've got to understand again where you begin and the system begins, and where you end and the system ends. Okay, we're not getting to that, but you're going to get that through the English law series. So don't take that definition too far, but it's going to work based on the meaning that I am here presenting through the dissection of this video. Okay. Now that device that we're using today is under a trust for sale scheme, which is through the device of fee simple and under free and common sockage. Okay. Now here's the main point. No one, as I've spoke to before, has ever been registered as a live being with dominion right. Okay. As the Jews have no right to enslave any individual, nor does the English common law, or do the Jews have a right to the common law legal title held into land, to which we've already discussed. They have a right only over an agreement when one accepts the use of their system. Rights only over the agreement to which the majority are agreeing to. Only. Period. Okay. So what is law? So back to the title of the video. The title says, how did our bodies get used for money by bankers? They didn't. That is a common misnomer. They have a right of use to the fruits of the land in which, through agreement by the people to give up their land for a use, subject to equity, they then become voluntarily trapped via purchase of these rights offered under jury to then use the fruits of the land as quasi-trustees, now called property, that they then purchase and hold. Okay, and that's all subject to equity. Nothing to do with common law, the English common law, and the legal title. So it's the equitable use administered by the Jews, who then grab a right to create titles for that use in equity. It's just another system within a system within a system, a use upon a use upon a use. Good. So is the video speaking to English common law or English law at all? We don't need to beat a dead horse, but definitely we are not, are we? Okay. Now, which brings me to another separate point, and it relates to another post I just wrote, from people who then jump on me and say, hey, you're not speaking the law, you don't know what you're talking about, okay? And then they bring in, maybe, well, you know what, I'm not going to mention names of people that bring this type of remedy within the system and ask you to join, and for so much a month or whatever, they're going to bring into a new element of yourself. And those are like ideas under independence under a constitution. Under a constitution, what does a constitution ever can hold? It can create its own customary laws and common law, subject to a use of land. They can never hold the common law interest because that's held in right of the monarchy. That's succinct, that's held, that's different. Okay, government doesn't hold that right because it only has a right in equity to the use of land. So when they say, oh, that right that was created in the original independence, and I'm going to make you sign here, and you can be an American national or national citizen, or even let's go in the international law system and let's become a world citizen or law of nations, or whatever they do. Okay, those are all under equity. Okay. So, and they claim to me, I don't know what law is. Well, yes, according to the belief, and like I even say as a Christianity and everything else, yeah, your belief is correct. I would think, because that's what you believe in, and that's you're using your own books and your own ideas and your own interpretations, and you're piecemealing things together, and you find something Black's dictionary, and you say, oh, here's what it means, and you paste it here, and then you create a whole diatribe of information from that one point, and you say, here it is, here's all the proof you need. Well, that's great. That's right. The proof you need within the belief that you created. But what does that have to do with law? And here's now, let's dissect that. Let's look into that further, okay? As Krishnamurti would say, let's delve into that further. What are you talking about? Okay? These people claim they're using the law, but what is law? Now, if you are claiming under a constitution, thereby under a group, which is a fiction created by law, what interest can you ever hold in law? Since land only affects, or English law of land only affects rights of possession in land, rights, agreements. So when you're saying that you are one of these type people, American national or national citizen or a world citizen, what are you saying as pertains to English law? As English law is obviously the predominant feature to which everyone is in agreement to, because that's the hierarchical system of landholding. And English law only deals with land and rights to the use of land in possession. They don't deal with people initially. You become privy to that agreement, to which then creates an obligation. You are not enslaved to the agreement if you don't have any interest in anything in common law, or you're using a certain personage in common law, as first through a capacity of a tenant for life, but then through a status of a settlor, a trustee, or a beneficiary, or a quasi-trustee, statutory owner, or a personal representative, citizen agent, blah, yada, yada, yada. You're obviously enacting a certain personage, thereby that personage has certain prohibitions, limitations it can only affect. And then that creates an obligation to which overreaches your maybe, if you're looking to vest that legal title in common law, or also from the hierarchical before the law itself, your dominion right. Okay? So what do you think, if you are one of those things there, what do you think you have done or are representing as pertains to law? Because as we've, again, I don't think reminding and beating this point home, in English law, all land must pass through a tenant for life in common law or in equity. All land passes through a life. And no one in English common law or English law at all has a lodium. Because it's a hierarchical system of landholding, with you in your dominion having the highest. But it's not noticed in English common law because you, as a natural being, have nothing to do with the English law, and you have dominion of the right of holding that land. To which then the English law comes in, creates legal personages, and has a right to use that land, and creates legal entities and religions, and, well, they don't create them, but I mean, they create rights to the use of the land based on the status you want to represent. You're just coming down, like I've said before, sitting down to that board game. You're the car, or you're the hat, or you're the thimble, or whatever you was. You're representing that piece moving around the board. But you picked up the piece. Okay? So those rules apply. That's what you're doing. Right? And you've seen my last video about how that relates to common law and those jurisdictions that then relate to rules that you create while you're playing are again two different jurisdictions. So I help to get your mind in covering that fact. Okay, so if you're recognized as a tenant for life, what status in English law? So what if American national? I have never read that in any law, or or national citizen or world citizen. What is that? If I went to a judge and he goes, okay, so now we have things that he's got to administrate over. You're bringing in the law, okay, or someone else is. Someone's bringing in the law. You're the carrier of the law. You're the carrier. You're the court. The judge is just administrating based on what you bring in. His hands are tied. He's not doing anything to you. He's only relating to what message you're bringing into him. So no one's doing anything to you. No Jew's doing anything to you. Banking's not doing anything to you. Government's not doing anything to you. They're only administrating over the agreement you're making. Okay, that's what anybody else is. That's all anyone's doing. Okay, so when you're an American national or one of those things, and you're bringing in, the rules of independence based on the foundational principle of the Constitution, let's say of the United States of America, what is the subject matter then? Because in order to establish jurisdiction, you got to have a subject matter, and then that's related against your status. And if you're saying American national, what the fuck is that? What's a subject matter? Oh, it's the foundational principles that are brought up in the Constitution of the United States of America. Well, what do they have? What do they fight for? What was that? You don't know. Most of you don't. I know. Okay, because if you brought that in, you're talking to an interest under equity, another layer of a use. You're talking to some sort of use to land. Okay, so it's not beating up. This is not beating up on at all on Edward Jay there. Okay, he's telling you of his understandings of how he sees the system. That's fine. You can talk about laws of merchants. You can talk about being a dead entity, lost at sea. You can talk about all those things all you want. Until you're blue in the face. You can talk about, when you were conceived, first conceived, and the church trapping your waist. Okay, you go ahead. But what do you want at the end of the day? What do you want? That's what you got to answer, and you better question, because when you walk into a court, you're speaking to, a cop doesn't even know what you're doing. It's not. He's a compulsory agent. It's not even a legal agent. It's only made legal once you start arguing the statute. It's like people arguing this, the jibby jab and the coof and all those things. You're making it real by arguing it. It doesn't even exist in the first place. I'm just saying, you got to get your head out of the fiction. We've all been so enamored. Our whole life has been within the fiction, and nobody knows what the principle. And yet, I'm speaking to the principle right now, and we don't even know what that is. We feel it, but no one knows what that is. So no one's doing anything to you, and as soon as you come to me as a victim, sorry, cupcake, suck it up, because you're the one who's doing it. I'm not going to help you. Okay, I'm looking for people that are ready to be honorable in agreements and can now, from the ashes of the system, which is unsustainable, that's based on that idea alone, it can't last forever. The money's inflationary because it's not backed by anything, so therefore it cannot run ad infinitum until it reaches an eighth of a percent of an eighth percent of an eighth percent of its value, to whereby a loaf of bread through hyperinflation is going to cost you, $500, and through destroying the earth, it can't. It's just not going to last forever. We know that. So it is up to us to do our due diligence, tap our heels together, and go back home, because we've only had the power. That's what I'm trying to always relate to this in all of my videos. You have always had the power. There is no one else who can. There's no title. There's no religion. There's no belief. Those are fictions. You have the power. You've got to make sure when you go before the judge or anything else, you either bring in the law and affect the power. Don't blame him. Okay? And even if he does, and you brought in the law, he's going to create an error. Yippee. He's created an error. Well, if you're speaking to a point of law only and you brought it in correctly, then you got the appeal court. The appeal court will deal with the law. You don't need to deal with the facts. He said, she said, and this person did this to me, and that sort of thing. That's for trial, and that's for the other lower courts. Okay, the dusty foot courts. When you go into appeal court and you bring the law, you brought them into law. Thereby, they can see the error. Again, done. The law is perfected. It's your misinterpretation of what law is, as I've just explained indirectly through discussing the video. Okay? So with that, please like and subscribe if you like this video. If you're getting something out of it, just do it. Just get this information out. And more importantly, anything I said, don't believe it. Okay? Don't believe anything I said. What you can do is go into the law, and I always set up all the links in order for you to go to see if I'm off my rocker or the cheese is slid off my cracker. Go. And once you find out for yourself, then we're going to be on the same page. We're going to debate the same things, because if you bring in your belief and you bring in religion, Judaism, Christianity, being a Muslim, Islam, being under government, constitutions, bringing in statutes under legislation, banking policies, taxes, you're not debating me. You don't debate me. You're not. I want to be debated. Hey, Dave, this is where you misspoke. Oh, where? Right here in law it says this. I have an opportunity to correct that. Good. The better I know the law, the better I'm going to be able to speak to it. But if you go ahead like those ideas that I've just presented and go and say, no, you're wrong and you bring in your belief, well, it's a belief. Therefore, you are truth in your belief, but you're never truth in the principle. Please share, like I said, get it out there, and let's get this done, man. Let's build from the ashes. It's the system is built under trust for sale, moving into a new trust. It's going there. You have nothing. You have only those rights you made purchase. You purchased a right. Show me the right you have. You can't show it to me. It doesn't exist. It exists in the land of fiction. I can go on, can't I? All right, I'm gone.